Welcome back, everybody, to the latest Moore Kingston Smith David Reviews look at the world of advertising, or as Steve Davis has now renamed it, the Graham Chyler Chat Show. Delighted today to be joined by Kai, the new Global Chief Executive of RSA. So firstly, congratulations, Kai.
Thank you, Graham.
If we start just by thinking about London, I just wanted to kind of get your view about how you found the kind of last 7 or 8 months, and how you kind of, what's your look at the landscape now?
We will call it the COVID quarter now. April, May, June was just one of the hardest 3 months probably for everyone, I can imagine, because no one knew what was going on. It was so, every day was a new bit of information, but we all knew that the world had come to a massive stop. So obviously financially it was hugely challenging. The furlough for us was invaluable and saved a lot of people's jobs and our sort of way of able to work, because we employ a lot more full-time people than probably most production companies. We have 40 staff on our books. That's 40. So there was a lot of people. I mean, so obviously we furloughed some. We didn't furlough everyone, so we could carry on trying to work. And then as we came out of that quarter, suddenly things picked up enormously. So, July, August, September, October, even now we're still working, which is great. I do fear, though, that December and January are going to be very quiet.
Probably share that. I mean, it feels like it's slowing down, right? But it does feel like across all of London, maybe there was a kind of mini boom almost of excitement after the COVID quarter.
Flurry of excitement, definitely. And obviously people trying to, even though they didn't know what they were going to do for Christmas, they still were trying to do something. And one of our animators has been part of that new campaign, which is great. The John Lewis one, which was obviously, I know they rewrote their campaign a few times because they weren't sure what messaging they should be sending out. As still people don't know, are you going to be able to have a table of more than 6 at your Christmas lunch? So I think December and obviously the new furlough extending till March is incredibly welcome for us with so many staff. So we've not let anyone go. We're still here. We're very lucky. We have a very lovely building, and just see if we can weather it through to March and see what's happening by then.
You put your finger on something there in terms of how big you are, 40 staff. I mean, you're the kind of big beast of London advertising production in a lot of ways. Has that made this period maybe more difficult for you? Because obviously it's suddenly become, de rigueur to be small, not have an office, etc.
Absolutely. There was a huge amount to consider being so large. And I think that because we could furlough staff, which really helped us maintain the infrastructure, if you like, to try and look for work and create work, even if it wasn't there, sort of thing. Like Black Dog were busiest than they've ever been. They carried on. There's a lot of music stuff they could carry on doing. So I'm not talking about massive budgets necessarily, but there was stuff that people could be doing, and their personal projects, maybe we could help them do that. And I think on the flip side, I know a lot of the smaller companies, as you say, they haven't got big overheads. There may be only 3 or 4 staff, and they rely on freelancers. So I feel very sorry for the production freelance business, because I think a lot of them are in that bracket where they didn't get any help or anything. So I'm lucky that, all our producers, PAs, PMs, we've kept everyone employed and everyone working on some form of project, whatever it might be.
And where are you in terms of staff coming in and out and the kind of basics of working life, as it were?
We opened the office again in July. As soon as that directive, and they changed it, I think it was early first week of July, and we've let people come in if they want. And it's been interesting. Some days there's nobody in, some days there's 25 people in. It's been very, changeable. We have an amazing office manager who's made our building COVID safe. There's hand sanitizer everywhere, and yellow tape stopping people getting too close. Ridley would hate it. But the other thing we're trying to offer is we've got such a big building here. It's in Soho. There aren't many production companies with a building like this in Soho, so we're offering up some more flexible space if people want to come in, hire a desk for a week, a month, a day, have a meeting here, whatever. So it's sort of production we work. And I think that's something we're going to build on for next year, because we're here, we're not going anywhere.
I mean, maybe if COVID's done nothing else, it's accelerated that feeling, as opposed to everybody being in their own little bubble. Suddenly people are having to find ways to do stuff together in a different way, maybe.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
With your now new global hat on, right, with your empire across the world, what are you seeing in different markets?
Well, I think America's really tough still. I think there's a lot of, maybe with the election result now, it'll help their feeling of not knowing what on earth's going on, which I got the impression for the last sort of few quarters was very, very indecisive. But it's picking up now, I think. China seems to be, they carried on, you know, they keep telling us they've got no cases, so we've got some work coming out of China. And Amsterdam have found it quite hard, a bit like London, you know, it got shut down very, very quickly. They've found the normal advertising work to be very quiet, but the more longer form projects they're working on, that's still going ahead. So it's sort of mixed across the world, I think. But again, we're having to be much more collaborative. So we're helping each other across the markets. For instance, we've got a project that started here in London. We're going to use an American director because the talent is in America, and then the funding our Amsterdam office have found. So that would never have happened before COVID. We'd have all just run off and tried to do it on our own. Do you know what I mean? So I think immediately you're all together you talk a lot more on the deadly Zoom.
Yeah.
It's not the best way of communicating, but at the same time, it's been a lifesaver for some people I know. China
strikes me as quite interesting because they did kind of keep going, obviously, because they could lock down so hard and so fast. But are you getting more volume than you would typically get out of there, or is it the kind of normal sort of volumes?
Normal sort of volumes, yeah, similar. But I think they possibly are still looking at shooting. They want to shoot abroad still. That's a lot of the Chinese work we do isn't local. It's when they have their bigger campaigns and they come to us for a bit of Hollywood glamour or something like that. Yeah. So that's what they're keen to carry on doing.
Is there, just thinking about Amsterdam, is there any sense, only because it's obviously back at the top of the agenda, that Brexit is going to make that more busy, less busy? How do you foresee that playing out?
Yeah, that was one of the original reasons for setting up the Dutch office. And I think come January, there may be some clients that really only want to work. They don't want to have any complications with a non-EU company, which obviously the UK will be. So I envisage there will be some movement there, and I hope we will be able to capitalise on that.
One of the things that seems to kind of be coming through in various conversations I'm having is obviously, shooting is slower. You're more restricted by the rules and such like in terms of PPE and those things. Do you have a feel for how much extra production costs now than it may have done 12 months ago?
I think you could probably add on about 10 or 15% because it does slow things down, like you're saying. Then there's the remote factor that if some people are remote, whether it's the client or part of the agency or even the directors, we've done remote shooting with directors being not in the same place. You get one little glitch or something goes wrong with the signal, everything stops, so there's a lot of, a few unforeseen, not that I want to sort of make that a big thing because you can get over it, but I do think there are still a few little hiccups that people are going to have to be figuring out if that is going to be the new norm. And I know certain clients like Unilever are saying nobody is allowed to travel, full stop. You all have to make it work. So you either have to pick up local talent and then all the clients in the agency will have to be watching remotely. So, if you want to go to some lovely remote location, forget it. There's not going to be good enough signal. If you're in a studio, it's fine. You know what I mean? So I think there's some considerations like that are going to sadly maybe affect creativity if clients all want to watch every frame and suddenly things start going wrong, they're going to get very frustrated. So I think there have to be a new form of trust, a bit like you used to do in the old days with film. You wouldn't see everything. You just have to wait, wouldn't you, and hope hope you got a good neg report the next day. So it might be a bit of that again, rather than watching everything live.
COVID makes us go back to the 70s. Perfect.
Yeah.
How much discussion is there about where that cost sits? Or is there an expectation that you, the production company, are paying that cost?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Davis at the APA has been absolutely brilliant at trying to navigate talking to agencies with the IPA and working out how best way forward, shared risk, if you like, shared responsibility, because it's nobody's fault, any of this. You can't put the risk entirely on one person or company. So I think currently, though, there isn't a sort of standard, this is what we need to put in for. I think when we're budgeting, we know we need to allow a bit more time than you might do normally for checks and things like that. So maybe, what you might have tried to squeeze into a 1-day shoot, you just think, no, this is just too risky. We're going to have to make it a 2-day shoot to give yourself some leeway. So obviously the crews are smaller though, so maybe it'll work out in a similar sort of cost in the end. You know what I mean? It's not that dissimilar, because you're shooting 2 days, but with a small amount of people, because you can't fit in a room.
And the 10 to 15% that you mentioned, is that universal across markets, or is there different standards and different rules in different markets?
Well, it's a good question. I think America, it might end up even being a bit more, because the DGA are suddenly getting involved, and they're asking for a lot of things. For instance, and this all falls on the production company, they want every single crew member to be tested every day, beforehand, during the shoot, whatever. And we've only been asked to do it for the sort of key crew, or if talent are working with makeup, or you know what I mean, there's sort of what we call the inner circle are being tested, but they've asked for absolutely everyone. So it's just things like that I think people are going to have to start negotiating about who pays, because if you want those instant tests, they're not cheap at the moment. They cost a lot of money. If you've got a crew of 50, you can do the maths. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is a lot of money. Look, and anecdotally, I spoke to Steve last week, and he's obviously incredibly proud that there are no shoots cancelled in the UK, and he's rightly so. Anecdotally, there have been issues in the States. I would imagine that also heightens maybe the concerns and their worries about equipment.
Yeah, they have, and they're much more. And as you know, with the American union thing, they insist on so many people around a camera, and that sometimes isn't manageable in a smaller location. So when you're staying 2 meters, so then that's why they're going for this testing thing. So I think there's still a bit more to be negotiated out there for sure, which is why it's definitely, out of all the markets, the bumpiest, I'd say, still.
So if you look ahead, where's your positivity or negativity dial on 2021?
Well, on the positive front, you'd hope that this massive change has brought about some much needed addressing of certain scenarios. We were just talking about the fact, I know a lot of agencies have had to really have a proper hard look at how many people they employ and what sort of work they do. And I think the merging of many agencies has happened in the last year, and Grey being the latest with AQQA this week. And I think the same with production companies. It's interesting, isn't it? We saw Blink and Rogue talk about sharing space. And I think so that was happening anyway because of the increased cost of living, overheads, and lack of work, if you like. So I think this acceleration of having to readjust, reassess, look at your business, and hopefully there are positive sides that will come out of that. That's the sort of plus side. The sad side I think for a lot of people is, I think for the youngsters in the business, where first-hand experience is the only way to gain experience and to be on set and to be in an office and pick up what's going on. I think for that generation, it's going to be incredibly hard to gain those skills when you're not mixing and interacting in a normal way. Of course, you can do a few Zoom things and what have you, but it's not the same as sitting on a set or in an office.
It isn't the same as sitting in the same room as you can't. So I get that. I normally like to finish by, and there has been a lot of new work around all of a sudden, so that's great. Just getting what has kind of struck you as being particularly interesting or good, or that's come out recently.
Well, I think this John Lewis thing is a really great idea. You know, I think even though I know one of our animators is in it, I haven't, you know, it's not because of that. I think it's a really brave thing to do, to get a group of different people and to do it for the reasons to make sure they could employ as many people as possible, young animators and model makers, and the fact that it's for charity, I think that's really, really smart and with a great purpose. I think they've won Christmas as far as I can see, compared to all the other ones that have been out there. They've managed to do it again. You know, Richard Brim and the gang, they've managed to really hit the mark, I think.
I agree, but I, as a humble functionary and not a creative genius like yourself, I would just put a word in for Kevin the Carrot.
He's back.
On that happy note, I'll say thank you very much and see you all again soon.